Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by two of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about something we love very, very, very much. I mean, there's many things we love, but this one really ranks up there. That, of course, being movies. I don't know. I'm doubly blessed this week, guys, to do this with you not once but twice. Last night, relative to when we recorded this episode, we recorded our Game of Thrones finale discussion with special guest Chris Lopez, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast. If you missed that episode, go back and take a listen. But tonight, on this episode, we are going to be reviewing not one but two films: John Wick 3, Parabellum, and Pokemon, Detective Pikachu. We got a lot to talk about, a lot on our plate, but before we get to that, let me introduce you to my wonderful, fantastical, and really fucking handsome co-host. Jim Pugliafico is here. Hey, babe, how's it going?
It's going great. 2 nights in a row talking about movies with you guys. Well, last night was a TV show, but it was practically a movie. We had that conversation. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to this discussion about these movies. It should be interesting. Hope some of our people in chat join us and join the discussion. I want to hear what people think about both of these movies.
Indeed. And Will Witness is here too. Welcome, Will.
It feels weird to be back at this so quick, so soon after doing the other one. But you know what? I'm well outside of the podcasting refractory period. I'm ready to go again.
The podcasting refractory period.
Ready to shoot another load of podcast goodness.
Oh boy, we've earned our tag.
Yeah, we're gonna get our tag tonight.
Yeah, the explicit just popped up. Yep, there it goes. There it goes. iTunes just gave us the potty mouth.
You're going to get tagged tonight. That's pretty true. Yeah. Anyway, a lot to talk about here. But as Jim said, if you're listening live, hop into that live chat. We'd love to know your thoughts on these films. If you're listening via the magic of digital tape delay through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to find us on Facebook. We'd love to know what you think about these two films. Just comment on the post for the episode. Become part of that conversation. And if you're watching on YouTube a few days after we record, or even a few years after we record, feel free to let us know in comments what you thought. It's interesting. We've been having people going back and watching episodes from like 4 years ago, which is crazy. And so discussions on movies that I've completely forgotten about, like Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. I don't know how you can forget about that movie. It was so bad. But like the other day, someone's like, I don't know why you guys didn't like this movie so much. And I'm like, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Gosh, I barely remember it. Like, I'd have to go back and listen to myself talk about Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunting to remember what I thought about Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunting. But I guess that's why we have an archive.
There may be movies we've seen lately, not very lately, but that I would substitute Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters review for. We should go back and do a re-review sometime of some movies. You know what I mean? That we maybe didn't care so much about. We go back and watch them. Maybe we'd hate them even more. Maybe we'd like them a little bit. Who knows? I don't know.
I've got an idea for a theme. Ready?
Yeah.
Ready.
Movie Bears podcast Second Chances, wherein we each pick a movie that we didn't like, but we think might have aged better over time. And so maybe we do like 3 reviews or whatever it happens to be. And let's see which one get wins and which one gets voted off.
I love that idea.
This sounds like a Survivor season, Will.
Yeah. I eat, breathe, and bleed Survivor. So yeah, I totally ripped that off.
Let's see which of these movies will be able to come back from Bad Movie Island,
and which one's getting its torch snuffed again.
Oh goodness, we got to make this happen. All right, we're gonna look ahead of the schedule. We're gonna find a week where like all we have is dismal bullshit coming out, and maybe we can slot that in. We're gonna have to make that a thing.
I love it.
All right, well, let's get to what we're actually here for this week. We got 2 films we're going to talk about. That, of course, being John Wick 3, Parabellum, and Pokemon, Detective Pikachu. We're going to hit John Wick 3 first. and then we'll follow up with Detective Pikachu. But for anyone who's listening that maybe hasn't seen these films and you're not familiar with our format, that's completely okay. Maybe you're a new listener. We love you. B, we're going to talk about each movie in turn, spoiler-free for probably 10 minutes or so. If you're looking for a recommendation, whether we liked it, if that somehow maybe helps you make your decision, cool. Feel free to hang out for that portion of the discussion, but we'll give you fair spoiler warning time before we kind of take the lid off that can of spoilers. So if you haven't seen them and you want to, you'll have time to step away. So all of that said, guys, are you ready for John Wick 3 Parabellum?
I'm Parabellum parlaying. Yes, I'm ready.
I got my pencil ready. Let's do it.
Hey guys, do you know what we need?
A definition of Parabellum?
Well, that, but also guns. Lots of guns.
Lots of guns.
All right, here we go. Our discussion of John Wick 3 Parabellum. All right. Hopefully, like the trailer of that movie, hearing actual Keanu Reeves gets the bad Keanu Reeves impression I did beforehand out of your head. We're going to go to Jim first. Jim, tell us a little bit about the setup of these films, because I think by and large, you've been the most enthusiastic about them on the show. This is kind of like your franchise these days. Tell us a little bit about, was this worth seeing in theaters? Maybe worth waiting for rental or Redbox or Netflix, or maybe even worth skipping entirely. What did you think?
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting review, because I think you're right. I think I've been kind of into these movies, at least the first two, and we'll see what I think about the third one. John Wick 3, Chapter 3 Parabellum is the name of this movie. So just a slight spoiler warning for the second movie, because I'm going to read something in the description of this movie that might spoil a little bit of the second movie. In this third installment of the adrenaline-fueled action franchise, super assassin John Wick, played by Keanu Reeves, returns with a multi-million-dollar price tag on his head and an army of bounty-hunting killers on his trail. After killing a member of the shadowy International Assassins Guild, the High Table, John Wick is excommunicado, but the world's most ruthless hitmen and women await his every turn. So here we go. We got the third installment of the John Wick movies, starring Keanu Reeves. Lawrence Fishburne is in this. This one's directed by the same guy who directed the first two, and that is you're gonna help me, Chad Stahelski, who is, by the way, he's his background is in stunt work. He was a stuntman, stunt coordinator, and it shows in these movies. We'll talk about the action set pieces, of course, because basically what we have here in these movies is, or at least in the third movie, is basically a string of action set pieces involving hitmen of all sorts and types attacking John Wick, getting attacked by John Wick. And we've got some like amazing fight choreography and stunt work in these. There's some like just imaginative stuff you like haven't seen yet. Of all the fight scenes you've seen, this stuff in this movie you probably haven't seen yet, and that's really cool. I think that's the strength of this movie. That's what carries this movie. I don't think this movie has much in terms of like a plot, or we can talk about stakes as to whether we think the movie has stakes and the characters have stakes or not. I think the movie actually has less stakes than the first, certainly the first movie, and maybe even the second. But I think, I think for me anyway, this movie really boiled down to just a series of action set pieces, kind of sewn together with a pretty sketchy plot, and kind of what drives the action. I have mixed feelings about this movie. I did enjoy some of the action for what it's worth. It's great to see like how some of the stuff was shot and how it went together. And I like seeing Keanu Reeves do his thing on the screen. I think he's really developed this character into something that people can get behind. This movie was very, very popular this weekend, knocking Avengers Endgame out of the top slot for the weekend finally. So that's cool.
Oh,
and
snap.
Oh, snap. Yeah. So yeah, this movie is this is a good movie. If you're really into the action stuff, I think you're going to love this movie. But if you're looking for anything else, I think you might come up a little bit empty. But then again, I'm not sure anybody goes into these movies looking for anything else. So take it for what it's worth. Take it on face value. A great summer blockbuster action movie. A lot of whiz bang, a lot of bang bang, and yeah, a lot of cool stuff. We'll get to a lot of it in spoilers, but yeah, what'd you guys think?
Well, a big recommend from you. Let's move on to Will. Will, I'm curious your thoughts. Where did you come down on John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum? There, whole title. Said it.
Whole title. So this franchise surprises me. It the very first one of these films, it was a last-minute addition at a film festival, so much so that they hadn't even released a trailer yet for it. It was just the new Keanu Reeves movie. And so I skipped the first screening of it. And everyone's just like, you got to see it. You got to see it. So I was like, okay, I'll catch the second go around on it. And it fucking blew my mind. The second movie fucking blew my mind. And so I thought, can this trilogy keep it up? These movies that are coming out so quickly after one another, and the third movie in a trilogy always kind of dips up a bit. I don't know. For me, it still fucking blew my mind. Like, I think John Wick is the single best action franchise out right now because it knows exactly what it is, and it does exactly what it does flawlessly to a T. This is a movie that is, or this is a franchise, and this is a film that is very much about show, don't tell. You know, there are some moments of dialogue. There are some moments of exposition. That's how storytelling works. But a lot of the world building that happens in this franchise happens just through interactions with people. In this film, you learn more about John's past, some people that he's interacted with, some groups that he's been a part of, some of the transactional relationships that they have as a result of things that have happened in the past. And you find out all of those just through conversation as they're moving to the next thing. You don't have to have like a big cutaway where someone says, oh yeah, and then there's this one time John Wick did this one thing. No, you just find out about it sort of like in media res. You find out about it midway through. There's a lot of really cool fights in this one. The stunt choreography is amazing. Part of the reason I think Stileski works so well with Keanu Reeves is, you know, you mentioned, Jim, that he was a stunt double. He was actually Keanu Reeves's stunt double on The Matrix. Like, they have a relationship working together for a while back. And to me, it seems so impressive that they went from that type of relationship to now I'm making films and dude, I want you to star in them.
That's super impressive.
And don't worry, I'm going to make sure that you get a lot of cool kills in this.
And a lot of money.
Well, yeah. And the thing about these two is that these movies just sort of popped out of nowhere. Like, if the first one was a flop, then the first one, you know, then yeah, it was a relatively low risk, all things considered. But the fact that it was so successful, the fact that they keep getting these people to come back, that they're building out this world. We've got like Ian McShane has come back for each of these in that Winston role with the Continental. And he isn't, I mean, Ian McShane's always a scene sealer, right? But here, like, he is like sort of at next level McShane, not just this film, but this whole franchise. Like, this character is so part and parcel to this series. I do like a newcomer in this too, Asia Kate Dillon, who we've seen previously on Orange is the New Black. She gets to play a pretty interesting role in this one with a little bit more competence than I would say that she showed off in that show. I don't know. You know, if I'm ranking all of the movies, is this my favorite of the John Wicks? Probably not. I think the first one is always going to be the best because it was the tightest little story, and all of the other ones are going to be more grand just because the world is opening up, and I don't think you'll ever be able to recapture the lightning in the bottle of that first one. But this is a good movie. This is a really, really, really good movie, and it's one that if you need a good action fix, I would strongly recommend John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. Did I miss any words? No, I think that was all of them.
I think you got it. So another big recommend from Will. Will, it's interesting you mentioned Asia Kate Dillon being from Orange is the New Black, because the big female like assassin from the second movie, Ruby Rose, was also from Orange is the New Black. So now I'm wondering, like, does the director have like some kind of relationship with that show, and you know that's where they're coming from? Or
there's also there's some relationships there. There's obviously Keanu and Lawrence Fishburne from the Matrix
movies, right?
And then of course now the series has had, I want to say, 2 different characters who were from in Jerome Flynn and in Alfie from the first movie, who were both Game of Thrones alumni. So he's definitely pulling from certain properties.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys enjoyed this movie as much as you did. I will say I enjoyed the movie, but I will also say I don't think I enjoyed it near as much as you guys did. And that's completely, you know, due to one fact, I think. And that's, you know, the first movie, oh man, action's incredible. This is so great. Like, give it all to me. Okay, cool. Second movie, I'm like, oh man, I'm really excited to be back in the world of John Wick. The action's so great. This is awesome. Give it to me. Third movie, I'm like, wow, this action's really great. It's cool to be back in the world of John Wick, but like, man, I've had so much action at this point. Like, I just want to breathe. Like, I just want character development. Like, I just want something to happen. And we get some of that character development here in the film. There's some questionable choices there for me. But it almost felt like this film, compared to the first two, was more of like a paint by the numbers, like roller coaster ride, where like the roller coaster just stops every couple minutes to like let you look at something and then down again. And I don't know. I'm getting really numb, I guess, to the action at this point. There's some questionable choices made. Like at one point, you know, they got guns, but they're just using swords because swords fucking look cool when you're on a motorcycle, you know, driving down a bridge. And that's in the trailer, so that's not a spoiler. And there's like a reason for that, I guess, because of the group of people involved. But I don't know. I think I'm getting desensitized to these movies a little bit, and they're not as impactful to me as maybe the first two were. I think it's a fun ride. I enjoy seeing Keanu Reeves do his thing. It was nice to see, you know, a guy who sort of looks like Jon Snow pet his dog, compared to like Jon Snow not petting his dog.
You're one of those petting guys.
But I don't know. I mean, I liked it overall for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time expounding on those things, but I wanted to sound a note of like, thank God the next movie is coming out 2 years from now, because I think I need a little bit of a break from John Wick for a while.
And I think, Will, you hit on it well. This movie really, really has fleshed out this world, right, of this kind of assassin world with its hierarchy and organization structure and characters within that framework. And it works, right? It's fine. This movie, I think, relies on that structure to the point where I think it kind of gives up a little bit on emotional stakes. There doesn't seem to be much in this movie. The whole drive of this movie, and this is not a spoiler, is that everybody wants to kill John Wick, and all he's doing basically is trying to, I think, extract himself from that situation. This whole movie, I think that's the whole thrust of this movie. I don't think he has any other motivations whatsoever except to basically self-preservation and to try to make some kind of graceful exit from this world that doesn't involve death to himself. And that's cool. That's fine. I mean, that kind of simplifies the landscape, so it can just plop in these one after the other action set pieces, which I said are fantastic. Like I said, you might not see anything quite like these action set pieces, but they can get a little bit numbing after a while. They do throw in some cool little things that they do. Again, we'll get into it in spoilers, but I just wish there was more emotional stakes. If you go back to the first movie, you had him, his dog and his car, and like we were just getting into this world too, which kind of learning about the world. It was kind of brand new to us at the time. So that was very interesting. I think it's become less interesting because now we have the world and we didn't learn a ton more about the world. I mean, we've used the same framework for that world that it's built. But so that interest is not as it's just not as interesting. Because we're not really learning much new about the character or about the world. But again, I'm not sure that's what people are going to see these movies for. The movie did great. I think people just want to see John Wick kick ass and take names, and I think that's what this movie does.
I think for me, at least, and granted, this isn't like a drama that like is just full of a lot of like overwrought dramatic moments or anything like that. This isn't that type of movie. But when I compare it to the majority of action films that try to make you care like about the emotional stakes of the characters, I would still say, at least for me personally, I'm very invested in this character primarily because the through line of this has to do with not just him kicking people's ass or revenge against a dog. It was never about the dog, in the first one. It's about what the dog represented in relationship to him getting out of the game, why he got out of that, and why it's so painful for him to both be out of the assassin game and then now being dragged back into it. And so they don't beat you over the head with that. This isn't that type of movie. They beat you over the head with literally everything else in the room. Sometimes multiple times. But did you do it with the pencil? Yeah, I did with the pencil. But you do get these little moments of reminders, usually in the dialogue scenes, or usually if someone's just sort of like kind of talking through John Wick's past, where you're sort of reminded about like the stakes for him aren't just do I get killed? It's more like I gave up everything for this. I gave up everything to get out of this, and now everything's been taken from me. And going back in means that everything that I sacrificed during that time is a little bit, air quotes, like meaningless, or it loses some of its effect for him. So I think that to me is what keeps this character so compelling. He's not a man of many words. He says exactly like the fewest amount of words possible as he's getting his point across. But there's always just that just sort of that lingering in the background for me, at least.
I know. Go ahead, Brad.
No, you go ahead.
I know he's lost everything. What is his primary motivation? Is it revenge or getting out?
I don't know that we can talk about that without going.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very cautious there.
Yeah. So I think what we'll go ahead and do at this point, if you guys are down, we'll go ahead and move on to our spoiler discussion. We all three liked this movie quite a bit. I know I sound a little negative. I just wanted to, offer a different viewpoint that may not necessarily be yours, but by and large, we all really liked it. So if you're on the fence about it, and guys, final question I'll ask before we go to spoilers: do people have to see John Wick chapters 1 and 2 before this one? Because a lot of people are asking. What would you advise?
I would advise yes. One, they're great movies, and two, this movie is even though they're all part of the same storyline, these happen in very short timeline succession to one another. Like this movie literally starts seconds after the second film ends. Right. So yeah, if you read a synopsis of what happened, can you go into this one and get a good experience from it? Absolutely. But it does feel sort of like turning on the television in the middle of a story and trying to piece things together, as opposed to like being there since the opening credits.
Right. Someone at work told me all you have to do is play Fortnite and you pretty much understand the whole plot of the John Wick movies. I guess the Continental plays a role in Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite, so I have no idea. But
so the Continental's not part of the story of Fortnite. It's a totally separate IP. Although every so often Fortnite includes like you can play as Thanos or you can play as John Wick as like a special skin. But it's not quite like the same. Honestly, like John Wick has way less 9-year-olds like swearing at you than Fortnite.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take the lid off that can of spoilers. If you haven't yet seen John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, now is your time to step away. I keep wanting to call it John Wick Chapter 3 Paramecium because Paramecium and Parabellum both have para in them. Maybe, guys, maybe we'll get John Wick Chapter 4 Paratrooper next. How cool would that be? He could have sword fights while like parachuting.
Maybe.
I'm in, at this point, like I'm in.
Oh, goodness. All right. Spoilers are officially fair game. We've awkwardly bantered for long enough. We're ripping off the Band-Aid. Okay. So here's my question. From the beginning of this movie to the end of this movie, have we gone and have we actually gone anywhere or gained any ground?
I would say yes, because of a few things. So one of the things that's happened with John at the beginning of this, he had some light contacts who are still sort of in, even though he's like excommunicado right now, he still had some people that he could leverage under the table. Those resources he exhausted through the course of this film, in some cases in pretty dramatic fashion. What it did set up, the major point at the end is, even though he's still sort of in a similar boat, he's against the table. One, he's there by choice instead of by sort of by shitty circumstances at the end of the second one. And two, he's in a better position to probably overtake the high table in the fourth one, because now he's got, instead of just sort of allies who are willing to kind of help him at arm's distance, he's now got people that are ready to go to war with him. And that all happened because of the way John weaved through the story. He created sort of a ripple effect that is igniting. He's the wick that's going to ignite the war, Parabellum, for the fourth film in 2 years. So this film set all of that in motion.
So you think the fourth film is going to be more of a team versus team kind of thing? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if it's going to be team versus team. I don't know but I do know that at the end of this film, he's now got people, basically the underground group, the
Lawrence
Fishburne and all of them, who are ready to take down the high table. He didn't have that before. So I'm not saying that it's going to be just like these big brawls. I don't know what it's going to be, but I do know that coming into this one, he was back against the wall. And now it's like, if we're using our Survivor analogy, he's just found a hidden immunity idol and he's ready to go back in and wreak some havoc on the game.
So back to my question about what is his prime motivation in this film? Is it to get revenge on people, or is it to preserve his life and get out of the game?
So I think for most of it, that it's been the latter. He wanted to be out of the game. That was the movie one. Movie two, the consequences of him trying to get revenge come to full bore, and that one act of violence at the Continental kickstarts all of this. But he still wants to be out of it. Like, he doesn't go knocking on as many doors trying to kill things. He's trying to do everything he can to get out of it. Up until the point where, one, he's offered the chance to, you can stay alive if you get back in the game from I forget
the high table guy.
The guy.
Well, the guy above the high.
The guy in the middle of the fucking desert for no reason at all.
The guy who sits in the high chair at the high table.
Thank you. I was thinking the exact same thing, Brad. He's sitting in the high chair. So this dude offers him a chance. Like, look, you get back in, you do more of this assassination stuff. Like, you become Baba Yaga again, essentially. You get to live. But you don't get the thing that you wanted, which was to be able to sort of retire in peace. And John chooses that because to him, it's the only way to preserve his wife's memory. So at that point, he's going along with that. And there at the very end, he tries to make a more conscionable play and sort of kind of renege on all of that and protect the Winston. And that goes to bite him in the back too. So he's a man who is sort of trying to play almost at war with himself, because he both wants to stay alive. He's definitely got like the survivor's instinct of wanting to like preserve his own life, preserve the memory of his wife, just all of that stuff. But at the same time, I think that he would, if he could just retire to a beach somewhere, he would. And he's wrestling with the two because it seems like he's not able to get both of those things. Now, I do think his motivations are very different at the very end of the movie, where I think now he's at, fuck it, let's burn it all to the ground.
Well, at least he's invincible, right? Because like he fell, 8 stories from that roof and hit 3 fire escapes on the way down. And, you know, he's still alive and ticking. So maybe the 4th movie is all about like how his skeleton was like coated with adamantium at some point. And
at some point, man, and I commented on it too. That last piece was like, this whole movie, every action set piece is like to the point of like unbelievable, right? Because some of the things he does, some of the things he survives, and then you get to the last thing and you're like, oh my God, they just killed the character maybe. But you know, nope, he's apparently, the dude is bulletproof and injury proof. The guy basically walks away from.
At least they try to explain the bulletproofness, right? Like when the guy in the high chair above the high table like gives him the bullet resistant suit, it's like, okay, well, I guess him like getting bullets bouncing off makes sense. All right, I got it.
Yeah.
Of course, that doesn't cover his skin or protect him from swords on his skin or whatever. But you know,
yeah. So, where were the Dothraki? Will said he burned them to the ground, and I had
no Game of Thrones spoilers. This is
no
not the Game of Thrones show.
I know, but I had a thought when you said that. But no, he's not that person.
No Game of Thrones spoilers, but it was really neat to see Bronn of Blackwater in this. You know, we had Theon in the first one. We had Bronn in this one.
Yeah. Yep. That's another franchise, right? That they're borrowing from. Borrowing pretty heavily. But
and speaking of borrowing from franchises, I mean, they pulled a line directly out of The Matrix for this film, right? The whole guns, lots of guns.
Yeah.
And I kind of wondered, like, I don't know, movies will sometimes like homage things, but like to pull a line directly out of the film like that and have, you know, the same actor speak it in another movie. Are there any kind of like movie rules around that? Like, I'm curious how that works.
I don't know. I think at a certain point, like when you're leaning into, I think people were going to make the comparisons of, oh, it's got Morpheus and it's got Neo in it anyway. So I almost don't mind that they sort of lean into it. Like it's one of those, like, if I lampshade it, it sticks out a little less in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I never saw the Matrix movies, actually, so I can't.
Hold on.
Yeah. I never saw the Matrix movies.
It's okay, sweetheart. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Did we try to watch one time?
We did, and you hated it, and then you fell asleep. And we tried watching it with David Patrick at his place in Chicago several years ago.
Wow,
remember?
What a memory.
He was like, oh my God, you have to watch this, Jim, and put it on. And at least the Kung Fu Fury or whatever that movie he showed us was fun. But
it's one of those things. It's not where it's like, there were some.
That was it.
2 of the Matrix movies were not all that great. The first one was really good, but it's less a matter of just like, oh, you haven't seen it, you got to see these movies. It's more just like Matrix was such a thing for such a long time. Like every bit of like, there were a couple of years there where every fucking movie had some sort of like bullet time, like even comedy would find a way to do it. And so it's more like surprising just because like you've somehow managed. It's like if a piano's dropping and you somehow just deftly dodge the left, like you somehow dodged something that would have crushed anyone else.
I didn't see the movie, but I've seen its effect on other other stuff. Before we get off this though, I want to talk about. I mean, we each have to pick our favorite action scene. We have to, right? And I want to talk about the mine is the dogs.
Mine too.
The battle with the dogs and just the stunts that they had the dogs do was super impressive. There were so many action scenes here that you could pick from to call a favorite. But and by the way, no glass room is safe. Like if you see any character walk into a room with glass, you can assume that there's going to be a massive fight and that shit is breaking. But go ahead.
That dog scene was a really good one, and the Halle Berry character Sophia actually was kind of a breath of fresh air here for me a little bit. It was good to see John Wick team up with somebody else, and she was kind of giving me some Daenerys Targaryen realness, like the dogs were her dragons, and she was
no spoilers for Game of Thrones.
She was just fucking setting them out into the world to do whatever they will do. I'm not going to give any spoilers. But I thought it was fun, and it made me want a John Wick, Halle Berry team up movie. They could call it Wickenberry, and I'd be all over that. It'd be great.
I mean, if we ever the next film, the one coming out in a few years, if they don't include the Sophia character, I'll be disappointed. I think she has been my absolute favorite of all the supporting characters, villain, hero, whatever in this, because that scene was really, really, really good. Mostly it's just John Wick is a one-man army. Even when he's working with other people, he kind of steals the show, but that was the Halle Berry scene. Her and those dogs were so, and I'm a dog person too. So the whole time I'm watching it just fuck them up, dogs. Oh, please don't hurt those doggos. I was very invested in the safety of those dogs.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, she kills Bronn of the Blackwater, and you have to assume that the table isn't going to be happy about that. Is she going to be excommunicado? Is she going to come work with John and Morpheus in the next movie? I wonder.
I don't think they killed him though, right? Didn't they leave him with wounds to both legs? Just leave him on the ground?
She's probably okay under the table. The reason that John was got in trouble was because he did it on the continental grounds.
On the continental grounds, but she still attacked one of the high people at the high table. I have to assume if he didn't die, he's going to want revenge on her for that.
It'll definitely be I don't think it'd be excommunicado or anything like that, but her name's going to pop up on that little board with a 3 million or 4 million or something next to it at some point because someone hired
the board that they still write with chalk on a chalk board.
Asia Kate Dillon is just going to pop up and slowly take her gloves off and be like, Sophia, put her on the board. Will, what was your favorite action piece? We got Jim's.
Dogs. Yeah, nothing to add. Just it was the dogs. It was so much the dogs.
Same here, and I don't really like dogs that much, but I loved that scene and the dogs. So
people talked about the knife scene, the first. I guess it was the second action set piece, where the guys were just flinging knives at each other the whole time. There was some. You thought it was dumb? I thought it was dumb. Pretty inventive things they did in that knife fight. That was pretty cool. I mean, as violent scenes go, and I'm not even going to get into my discussion about how I have really reserved thoughts about movies that glorify gun violence, but I'll just leave it there. But the knife fight I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm in on the knife fight too. I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't judge these movies by physics, but I'm watching people throw these knives whoop, whoop, and the knives are stabbing really hard in, and I'm like, there's no way with the amount of force he threw that with, it went that deep into his arm. But whatever. I guess that's
a really sharp knives.
A minor quibble.
Really sharp.
they must be.
They were just
professional sharpness.
But the Ginsu, they're Ginsu knives.
I mean, it's not like they've been sitting around on tables and walls, like gathering dust and rust for years in this old abandoned weapons.
There were a bunch that bounced off, though. I'll give them that at least. Like, there were a bunch that got thrown.
They tried for some realism. They tried a little bit.
Gold star for trying. Anyway, final thoughts on John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, before we move on to our next film.
I'm good. Like I said, I'm fine. Like I said, I think it's harder for me to really get behind some of these movies the way things are going in our country these days. But and we can have, that's a whole nother thing we can peel back sometime maybe. But yeah, I think if you like action, gun play, knife play, sword play, dog play, horse play, this
book
movie
play,
motorcycle play, it'd be good for you.
All right. Well, then we are going to go ahead and switch gears and move on to our next discussion. We're going to be talking about Pokemon Detective Pikachu. So if you haven't yet seen Pokemon Detective Pikachu, how many different ways can we actually say Pokemon with different inflections? We'll have to find out. But if you haven't seen this movie, don't worry. We'll talk about it for 10 minutes without spoilers. If you value, an outside perspective on whether or not you should see it, maybe we can help a little bit. And then we'll give you a fair warning before we take you to Spoiler Pound Town. So that's coming up. Guys, are you ready for some Pokemon adventure?
Yeah, let's get through this.
All right. Yes, let's do it.
All right. It looked more like, it looked like you were actually like,
whatever it is.
It looked like you were actually about to like morph into a Power Ranger, actually.
So yeah, I really just didn't want to throw the Pokeball at my webcam is what I was trying to avoid, because that would have really changed the tenor of the rest of the episode.
All right. Here we go. Our discussion of Pokemon Detective Pikachu. Pika. So, Will, I know you are very into Pokemon, having been to your last house and your new house and seeing all the cool things you have, and you just demonstrated your Pokemon plush ball thing, which is very cool, by the way. Seems only fitting that you kick this movie off. You've got a little Squirtle there. I see. Squirtle.
Yeah.
So, well, tell us about this film and whether it's worth seeing in theaters, waiting for rental, or skipping.
So, Pokemon Detective Pikachu. The description of it is, in a world where people collect Pokemon to do battle, a boy comes across an intelligent talking Pikachu who seeks out to be a detective, which I realized that even in reading that description, there's two words there, Pokemon and Pikachu, that mean nothing outside of the context of the actual stories itself. Like, they're not good descriptive terms. But so to paint a little bit more broad, there's a video game and cartoon and trading card and mobile app craze that's been going on, owned by Nintendo since the 90s. Pokemon, where you collect these little monsters, Pikachu being the electric rat, the yellow mascot of the franchise. Historically, the Pokemon only say their name, but here, a character played by Justice Smith, who returns to Rhyme City, where his father was a police officer. He returns there because his father has recently fallen in duty, and he comes across a Pikachu that actually starts talking to him, just like normal conversation. He understands it, and it understands him. And oddly enough, it has Deadpool's voice. So what follows is a kind of a kid-style, family-friendly adventure set in the Pokemon world as the characters figure out what happened, why Pikachu's lost his memory, what happened to the father, and how the different Pokemon and the notable figures that they encounter in the world sort of interact in this sort of grand mystery. There are some pros and some cons to this. I'll start with sort of the cons. From a narrative perspective, It's very simplistic in places. Some of the story is a little bit messy and choppy, and there's a couple of the supporting characters, primarily, and I forget the character's name, but the Lucy, I think, the one who is like the reporter that shows up in this, who I feel like the line readings just like don't 100% click. But one of the big pros of this is the Pokemon are by and large fairly well represented on screen. You get to see this like fleshed out world of these digital CGI monsters, and it looks like a fun, interesting world. I think whenever the Pokemon are on screen doing something very Pokemon-y, like there's a bunch of like this type of Pokemon crossing a stream, or this one's crossing the street, or this one's
the word is Pokemonistic.
Pokemonistic. Whenever they're in full Poke zone, like it's cute and it's enjoyable and it's fun, and you get exactly what you want out of it in those scenes. When it gets back to story time, it suffers a bit. But at the same time, I think that it's probably less concerned with those elements. It's all about getting those cute Pokemon on screen, letting them do interesting things. To his credit, I think Ryan Reynolds is a very entertaining voice actor on this. Ryan Reynolds is really good at being emotive with this voice. Deadpool works so well because he's able to get a lot of laughs and surprisingly some gravitas with this very unique voice styling. So it shouldn't surprise me as much as it does that he's one of the strongest parts about this film, but he is. I don't know. I can't recommend this film to a general audience. If you don't know what Pokemon are going into this, you are not going to walk out of this movie like being enthused about the franchise. You're just not. But if you have the background with, like my dogs agree, if you have the background with Pokemon, you're going to at least be able to get some of those good, like nostalgic feels. And in that case, I think it's a light recommend. For me, I couldn't bring myself to dislike this movie, even though this film kept testing me on that. So I'm kind of right down the middle. The good parts were fun, but the bad parts really, really brought it down.
Well, we had the pleasure of actually seeing this movie with you in person, Will, as well as Mike Levins and his partner Pete. They were in town, and Jim, your daughter came along, and our friends Sam and Steven came, and so we had like a whole like Pokemon posse going to this movie. And I think that was the most fun part for me, was just seeing it with everybody as a group, talking about the movie, after the film ended, kind of hearing people's thoughts and opinions. And it was kind of interesting because like we had like a totally like Pokemon, like diehard crazed fan obsessed person. We've got Jim who like, through your daughter, I think maybe you can talk about this. Like you were aware of Pokemon, but you've never really like watched the cartoon or, been invested in the Pokemon franchise. And then you have a bunch of us who are kind of like filling, the other parts of the spectrum. And so opinions kind of varied far and wide a little bit on this movie. And for me, Will, you mentioned you're kind of like on the middle. I think I'm on the middle to bottom end in terms of how much
we've heard.
Well, typically it's the other way around. But for this movie, I don't know. Like, I like the Pokemon franchise. For me, it's all about the OG cartoon because that's kind of like what I was into with some friends in college. We would watch it like every day after class, and it was a fun thing to do. And I've poured many hours into Pokemon Yellow and various other Pokemon games, and I like the franchise a lot. But for me, like, I don't know, there's part of the setup with the way like Pokemon work in this movie and location, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, that I think took away some of the larger elements I was maybe expecting from the world of Pokemon, like going into this film. And so I think not seeing some of the things I was kind of looking forward to seeing, again, it's that line of like expectation versus like what they're going to give you. Right. And like, I can't be mad at them for not giving me what I wanted. I guess it's their creative choice, and that's the story they chose to tell. But as a fan of Pokemon, I think I was just hoping to see, I don't know, a few things a little bit differently. I feel like the story of this film is very weak. And you're absolutely right, Will. Catherine Newton, I mean, her acting, I don't know if it was her acting. I don't know if it was her writing. I don't know if it was like, why not both? Right. But it just really, it was super cringy for me. I love Ryan Reynolds, but like, you're Deadpool now, like voicing an animated character. I completely could not see Deadpool in my head, like as Pikachu was talking. And that really drew me out of the movie a lot. Jim's making a weird face. I don't know. Maybe
I'm just comparing Pikachu and Deadpool. I'm just trying to draw parallels in my mind. We'll talk about that.
Pikapool. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I almost wish they had went with another voice actor for Pikachu, because like already with Pikachu, you expect to hear the cutesy like Pika Pika, right? The fact that he can talk and a human can understand him is kind of a special thing in this movie. And I don't know. I wish it was a voice I didn't so much associate with another character already. And Justice Smith, I'm not Justice Smith's biggest fan. He was one of the worst parts of the last Jurassic Park movie for me. And just, I don't know, not a lot here for me, I guess, beyond just being a Pokemon movie. But it was fun seeing it with you all, and that's what counts.
Yeah, it was fun seeing with everybody. But then, you know, it's fun seeing any movie with you guys. But yeah, so I went into this movie. I knew what Pokemon were. My daughter, who you said that accompanied us to the movie, was a big Pokemon fan. I think she had did they have cards? And
they did.
You know, the games. And I knew they were fictional little like animal type creatures with silly names. That had powers, and they squared off against each other. And then I knew a little bit from when Pokemon Go was first a big thing, and I remember standing in a line at the zoo with hundreds of other people to get in on Pokemon night, and you know, people trying to catch them and stuff. But I don't have that nostalgia for it. So, and I think this movie really does better with folks who do have that nostalgia for it. So I didn't like the movie at all. I didn't really have anything for me. The Pokemon itself, I mean, they're cute and stuff, but they don't. It was really like, you know, here's a bunch of cute Pokemon doing different things in a very weak story, as you said. And I did recognize one Pokemon, so when Squirtle came, I was like, yes, that's a Squirtle, right? And that my daughter said, yeah, Dad, shut up.
You were so cute.
Yeah, Dad, shut up.
Who's that Pokemon?
Yeah. But it was also kind of disappointing that the movie really. You could say what you want about Catherine Newton's acting, but I don't think they gave her anything to do. They didn't really use the character much at all. At least in my memory of the movie, it was all the Pokemon and, you know, the Tim Goodman character, and of course Ryan Reynolds and Bill Nye. Like, it was kind of disappointing, especially like as a father of a daughter who was much into Pokemon, that they didn't represent. I didn't think they represented like the female interest in Pokemon in this movie at all. And that was, to me, that's a shortcoming of the movie, personally. But yeah, other than that, I mean, Ryan Reynolds, fine. They wanted his, you know, smart alecky, but basically it was like a G-rated, a toned down version of Deadpool, which I'm already lukewarm on Deadpool anyway. So to give me like a very like a blandified version of Deadpool, didn't do much for me in the character. So yeah, I can't recommend this movie. People say, oh, this is probably the best. They probably say, oh, this is the best movie based on a video game ever made. And I'm like, okay, that's not saying a lot, because this movie was terrible. And I know those other movies were even more terrible, maybe. But yeah, I don't see it as the best video. You know, I don't know. I put them all in the same pile right now until one really kind of grabs me by the throat and the eyeballs and says, hey, I can be really good. I don't think I've seen a great video game movie yet. So That's kind of it for me.
It's interesting. Yeah, because it's like, now that you mention that, I'm trying to think about.
Well, like Ready Player One, Connect count. I don't think it's because it's not based on one property.
Yeah, that's more of like
that's properties.
Yeah, like that would be more of like based on a book type thing, you know. I now that I've started thinking about it, like I think it might be one of those cases where the bar is very low. This might be my favorite video game adaptation, and I was fairly lukewarm on it, but I can't think of very many things that I'm sure I'm missing something. I'm sure that there's got to be one, right? Holy shit! Why is there not one that's better?
Well, what was the one with the?
Okay, here we go. Ready? Here are some movies. Was that one? Here's some movies based on video games that have come out in recent years. Warcraft, Assassin's Creed, Rampage, the Angry Birds movie, Prince of Persia, the Resident Evil films, Hitman, Agent 47, Ratchet and Clank, Need for Speed, Silent Hill, oh God, Doom, Max Payne, Mortal Kombat, Tomb Raider. Okay, there's a bunch of them.
I think in terms of like best translating the feel of the property to screen and making you feel like you're part of that video game world, this might be the best of that batch. Now, to be fair, I didn't see all of them. I didn't see Ratchet and Clank. I didn't see Hitman. And
64,
I don't,
whatever it was.
Hitman 69. Are you sure? Are you sure this isn't a porn parody list you're reading, Brad?
Isn't that the next John Wick movie?
Yeah. But it goes to show you that like it's frustrating that video game adaptations. It's hard to adapt like an interactive element into a presented narrative, because with a video game you're used to like, I'm walking around this corner, I'm picking up items. Like the way you interact with it is very, very different than the way that you consume a movie. And so I get why the stories don't always translate as well, but it is disappointing that you just read off that list and there wasn't a single one of them that I really wanted to go to bat for.
No. The only one that I kind of enjoyed a little bit more than this one was Tomb Raider. And that wasn't really video gamey, even though it's based on the property. It was more of like a live action adventure, right?
Yeah.
So
but it was a pretty direct translation, though.
And it wasn't great. It certainly wasn't great. But I don't know. I kind of maybe I'm a sucker for that kind of jungle adventure stuff anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the issue is the type of video game that Pokemon is compared to something like Tomb Raider. Like Pokemon is like an animated franchise. It's got the cute little monsters. They've got a CGI, those cute little monsters. You know, with Tomb Raider, it's just fucking Lara Croft. Like, put her in some short shorts and give her a couple guns. Like, boom,
guns, man, more guns.
You know. So I think this movie has a big job, and I think it tries to do it. It's interesting, you know, where we saw this movie, there were some groups of kids that came to it, and like, I don't know, after the film, I kind of expected the kids to be like running around like super Pokemonized, like, but they were like dead inside. And so I didn't know if they were just like tired seeing this movie. It didn't feel like the kids in our screening, at least coming out, were as like excited as you'd expect them to be. I don't know. I'm hearing from Big Tom, by the way. Hey, Big Tom, glad to have you with us. He says, I'm rocking the naughty librarian look right now. I totally forgot that I was wearing my glasses, so now I remember. But Tom, this is where I shake my finger at you and go, shh, this is a library. Does that work for you? Let me know.
To make Brad get the book.
Oh goodness. Well, guys, how about we use the next 10 minutes or so for some quick Pokemon spoilers? I think there's a couple things we probably want to talk about.
I choose spoilers.
All right. If you've not you had seen Pokemon Detective Pikachu, and you value the fact that you haven't seen it. You want to see it on your own, form your own opinion. A, that's fucking awesome. Very cool. And B, why don't you go ahead and step away for 10 minutes, go make a sandwich or something. Come on back at the end if you would like to rejoin us. But we're going to go ahead and give some spoilers for Pokemon Detective Pikachu starting now. One thing I will say, I didn't want to talk about this because I couldn't remember if he was in the trailer or not. The Pokemon that I loved seeing most show up in this film was Psyduck. He was my favorite Pokemon from the cartoon, and he made me so happy in this movie. That was the other bright point, but I couldn't say it because I couldn't remember if we saw him in the trailer or not. So sorry if I did a disservice.
No. I think if he is in the trailer, it's briefly, and there's so many Pokemon that are also briefly in the trailer that I think it was correct to leave him off. But you're so right, Brad. Like he's one of my favorite overall Pokemon just because he's like adorable and also very funny. I love his like like yeah. I love and he didn't have a lot to do in this movie, but he was like, I guess, was Psyduck the scene stealer of this movie?
I think he was.
Yeah, like
it wasn't the godlike Mew Mew, whatever the fuck it was. What was the what?
Mew Mew.
No, that's kind of close. He's not Mew. He's Mew.
He's Mewtwo.
Mewtwo. Oh shit! I missed the first one.
Yeah, I mean, Mewtwo was the problem with Mewtwo is that you didn't get to see a lot of him in his own characterization because of story reasons. He's at first a red herring, and then he's like a shell that this other character occupies, and so you don't get to see a ton of him. But oh man, Psyduck was a lot of fun. I like Psyduck.
All right, so let's talk about the whole reason Pikachu can fucking talk and be understood by Justice Smith. Pikachu is Justice Smith's dad. His consciousness is in Pikachu's body thanks to Mewtwo's abilities. Oh, you're muted, Jim. Oh,
you're
still
too.
muted. You're mute too, Jim.
I'm muted.
There you. Oh, now I heard you for a second. Now you're unmuted.
Am I back?
You're back.
Oh, so
you can fix this in post.
Yeah, and and his dad is Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
big surprise there, right?
I mean, if Deadpool's your dad,
we have Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and we have Ryan Reynolds as kind of watered down Deadpool. Then we have Ryan Reynolds as watered down Deadpool as the dad.
No. We get to see the last one there. We get to see Ryan Reynolds as Daddy Reynolds. Yeah. AC says he's rocking kind of the salt and pepper beard. Like, you know, he's putting on that daddy mantle.
Did that work for you guys? Like it being the dad character who's still alive with his consciousness swapped into a Pikachu?
Sure. I mean, like when I think about like the things that I had a problem with, it was not the individual story beats as they are. Like I think it was more just the way they kind of strung along. When you really think about what this story was about, like it's a mystery that involves these kind of neat little set pieces with this one character as the red herring while you're trying to find this other one, and you find out how they're like all of that stuff. If you were to just plot out those on graph paper, that's fine. It's fine. That's not the problem. They didn't always do a good job of setting up those moments or giving us good payoff with the delivery of those moments or letting us really feel those moments.
Yeah. I got word from my daughter on how she liked the movie.
Oh, let's hear it.
Yeah, she says, as for Detective Pikachu, she says, I like seeing the Pokemon featured from multiple games in the series, but I thought the plot left a lot to be desired. We said that, right?
That was around where I was.
Yeah. It reminded me of a live action retelling of one of the first animated Pokemon movies. And maybe that's where the germ of the idea. I didn't see it, so I don't know. So that's she said it was still fun seeing with you guys, though. Had a fun time that night.
That was my first time to meet her. So that was fun. And for it to be over something where, like, if we were just to see random, like, well, what did we see last time we saw a movie together and I visited? Was it Rampage? Like, I don't know that we would necessarily have like the same, like, getting excited over like our Rampage. I had fun with it as a kid,
right?
But,
right.
But there were moments where I'd look over and she'd be going like, "Who's that Pokemon?" And I'm just like, "Yes, yes." I too share these, like, the same joy that she's sharing over there. So it made me feel more connected to, I guess.
Yeah.
To you, Jim, actually, like, because through that, like, I don't know how to really to express that, but just sort of like, I don't know.
It's just character building, Will. It's character building, right? This is how, my narrative is built. But you get to know me through aspects of my life that you didn't know before.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was a very show don't tell experience. No.
That's right.
Oh, goodness. One thing I wanted to return to is just the setup of this film, now that we're in spoilers. When the movie started off, I was actually excited because we got this scene where, like, Justice Smith and his friend are, like, going out into the
hunting
grassy area, and his friend has, like, tricked him into going Pokemon hunting. And, you get to see him, like, throw the ball, and, Cubone, like, goes after him. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's great. And I was excited to see, like more humans and their Pokemon partners and, like, Pokemon battles. And I felt like this movie really fucking copped out by making Rhyme City the place where humans and Pokemons are equal partners, and there are not Poke battles that are legal, and it's not Pokemon and balls all the time. It just felt like it took all of the elements that
just the whole premise of the game, right?
Right, and just threw those out the window. Now, we did get a Pokemon battle. We got to see Pikachu go up against Charizard, right? And that was cool. But, like, I don't know. The big elements for me that I really dig in the games and the cartoon were like, oh my gosh, this Pokemon's coming at us, and what counters that Pokemon? Oh my gosh, it's this. Let's use that Pokemon and see what happens. And, I realize that this is a detective movie. They're trying to solve a mystery, not win a string of, gym badges. But I'm just kind of like, wasn't there a way to try and blend those elements in a little better?
It's almost like the premise of the game, if put in a movie in front of people, is like kind of problematic, and like portraying that on the screen would be tough to kind of rationalize, I guess. Either that, or they have to go the other way and totally make like a Pokemon battle movie or something like that, where every Pokemon fight for humans or something. I don't know. Flip it on its head.
It is hard because, like, they're like, one of the longest running jokes about this franchise is it's like, oh, it's teaching kids how to dogfight. Just because that's kind of what it is. It's just like, oh, cool. I went outside and I found a bird. I'm gonna, like, put it in a cage and make it fight your dog later this afternoon. Don't worry, they'll just faint. And I think part of the other reason why they did it that way, and again, I don't think it was graceful the way they did it, but just sort of trying to think through why they shifted away from it, is they probably wanted to make sure the city felt alive with a lot of Pokemon walking around, so that you could get to see all of those characters, even in the scenes that are more about, like, oh, Justice Smith walking down the street. You can see all these Pokemon popping all over instead of the trainers walking around with, like, their bags full of the Pokeballs. Right. Now, the argument against that is, even in the games, most of the like, characters have the little Pokemon standing next to them,
like, following around them.
But I would imagine they probably started from the premise of, how do we make it look to like, make this city just absolutely teeming with Pokemon, and they probably worked their way backwards from that. Again, I don't think gracefully, but I'm guessing that's where it came from.
Yeah, and I think they did that fine. I mean, I got the sense that the city was teeming with a bunch of different Pokemon, and I think it was probably fun for you guys, who have the nostalgia and knowledge of the game, to be like looking at a scene. And there were several scenes in the movie that I think were just there to introduced to try to say, oh, look, that's Schmoogly Bob or whatever the fuck the thing,
Bob, nice.
Whatever the name is. And I could hear people around me saying that, oh, look, there's a blah, 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 and that's cool. I think was probably something that a lot of the fans of the game could relate to in the movie.
Yeah, because that'll be like when we see the new Godzilla movie, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, it's Mothra. Oh my gosh, it's King Ghidorah. Dude, oh my gosh,
you don't know Rodan. Who Mothra, Ghidorah, and Rodan are.
I'm just saying you like the giant monsters, the kaiju, right?
Other and people you like the little ones,
the little monsters, the Pokemon.
Brad likes the pocket monsters, yeah.
But I like them both. I'm by kaiju pokist whatever, but it's kind of the same thing. Like you love seeing the monsters that you love show up, right? And so I do agree it gave a good mechanism to see a lot of different Pokemon. But Will, to your point, like everyone has sort of their partner Pokemon, that maybe runs around outside of the ball. Like they still could have done that. Maybe we wouldn't have seen as many Pokemon, but whatever. It's not my story. They chose to tell that story a certain way. So,
which other one was kind of neat to see? I don't have like a special affinity for this character or whatever, but it was another scene stealer. There was I had to look it up because I didn't even remember what it was called, but the Ludicolo, which is the little grassy duck thing with the what looks like a little like lily pad sombrero head that was tending bar. And he makes this like noise that was so fun. Like that was funny as fuck. And I wanted to see more stuff like that with just like the thing about it is like the concept of Pokemon is like silly, right? Like these monsters that can only say their own name walking around and just sort of interacting. It's silly. So like whenever the film like allowed itself to be just like super silly with it, I felt like it was a little bit more fun and I was having more fun with it. And so I could have used a little bit more of that.
Understandable. Well, guys, are we ready to put this movie back in the Pokeball, or do we have any final thoughts?
I'm good.
No, I don't. I think say put it back in the ball. The question is, you guys excited for another movie? I mean, another Pokemon sequel? Does this movie make you want to see another one?
Yes. Like, I still ended up like, when I think about the movie hard enough, like it falls apart. But like when I walk out of it, I ended up seeing it twice because Scott really wanted to see it. He's a huge Pokemon Go fan. In fact, we're going to Pokemon Go Fest in a few weeks. We're making a special trip across the country just for it. So when I both times I walked out of it, like I walked out smiling, even though like there are some very, 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 very big problems here. The stuff that I enjoyed enough to like still give me like a good feeling. And sometimes just that good feeling is better than just the idea of like, was it like on paper a good film or not? And so would I see another one of these? Yeah, I like that good feeling. I want more of that.
For me, I'd see it if we're going to review it on the podcast. Otherwise, that's a big old skipperoonie.
Yeah, I'd see it only to see if they could make a good, you know what I mean? Give them another shot to surprise me and subvert my low expectations, So that's probably the only reason I would see it. But if it looks like it's going to be more of the same, I'm not sure I would.
Well, they're making another one, so I'm sure we'll have to see what happens. But all right, well, we're going to go ahead and move towards wrapping things up. We talked about 2 big movies this week. Just to kind of put a pretty bow on things, we'll do a couple of quick housekeeping items. One, we, as mentioned earlier in the episode, recorded a Game of Thrones series finale episode with special guest Chris Lopez. Used to be a regular on the show. Now we only get him back on really special occasions. But if you want to listen to that episode, by the time you're listening to this one in iTunes or Spotify, that episode will be available too. So definitely go and check it out. Guys, next week, it's going to be a whole new world on the Movies Bears podcast, right? Aladdin's coming out this weekend.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that one.
This is such emotional whiplash. There were 2 really bad teasers for it. There was one trailer that started to look better, and then they released a final teaser where they showed the basically the performance of the Prince Ali song, and it's really bad. And so like I keep going, like I'm having emotional whiplash just like watching the marketing for this. I'm ready to just see this movie and find out like how it actually is.
Well, you're about to get your wish. Dun, 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 dun.
Anyway. We know it's got some good music in it, at least.
I would think that, but the version of Prince Ali they did at the teaser, like, oh, we're getting you excited for this, was not good.
Oh,
so maybe they still need to clean it up, but like it was just like, oh, that's underwhelming.
Well, hey, at least they're able to make Will Smith not look blue and weird, so they don't have to spend a lot of money on what the character looks like, right? So they can pump that into bastardizing other favorite songs. Wait, that's not a positive. I was trying to be positive. It didn't work. I'm sorry.
We're going to give it a fair shot because like the marketing for it, it's fair to judge a movie based on its marketing because
it's the point of marketing.
It's a commercial product. It's fair. Like if the film didn't want us to judge it on the marketing, they would have marketed it differently. But at the same time, once we see it, then we only can judge it based on the actual product at that point. And I'm really hoping this is a case where they just couldn't figure out how to cut a trailer.
Yeah.
You know my thoughts on these Disney remakes as it is, so I'm not necessarily. I'm not going to hold my breath until I'm blue in the face, but you never know.
Well, and I've been, I think, more positive about these films than you have, Will. So, going in, I mean, I really love the original Aladdin film, and I am going to do my best, even though the trailers don't look great. To be open and ready for whatever this movie wants to show me. But I reserve my right to grumble a little bit,
Yeah, this could go anywhere on the map. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, it could be, the problem is, with these remakes is how do you improve on something that's really good already? Like how could it be better unless you're doing something totally different? And this doesn't look totally different to me. I mean, it's live action. I get that, but the story is the same, and I don't know.
They have to protect their own brand at the same time, so they can't go totally different. Like that's the
right.
If it was DreamWorks remaking it, they could be like, "Oh, we're gonna like just stretch it or whatever," But.
So if you're not making something to be better than the first one, you're just making it then to make more money.
Well,
anyway.
Yes, but you're also making it for a whole new generation. Like a lot of kids nowadays, if you're like, "Hey, do you want to watch this like animated Disney movie from 30 years ago?"
Yeah,
and like your 7-year-old's going to be like, "Fuck you! I want to watch whatever that's not that." You know what I'm saying? So like, if you can remake it for a new generation, make it as a big CGI fest movie, you're going to get their attention. And yes, you're going to make a boatload of more money in the process. But
hopefully
Disney
will just start making them good.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? But anyway, so we'll be back at you next week with our review of Aladdin. And I know our schedule's been a little bit hinky because we recorded twice this week. Some folks were like, "Oh, we thought the Monday night show was the show for this week, so we didn't tune in tonight." It's okay. We still love you. We'll be back next Tuesday as normal. I'm back on a normal work schedule. I'm not working overnights anymore. Hey, man, it has sucked having to sit out like 3 of the last 4 episodes or whatever it was. But Jim, really happy to be back with you guys. This is a lot of fun, and looking forward to next week. So if folks want to talk movies between now and then, Jim, I know you and I will be up on a mountain with some friends most of that time, but where can people find you online? We'll start with Jim.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm JJP out Westeros at JJP out West. That's my Twitter handle, and you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right, awesome. And Will, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. I'm William Lindis. You can find me on letterboxd.com where I review films. Just look for William Lindis there as well.
All right, awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. And I'm the one that does not have a Confederate flag behind him. Also, I'm the one that kind of looks like me. So if you're watching the video, you can kind of maybe compare those. And also, apparently, you can find me in a library wagging my finger at you in a naughty,
but you are way. All about guns.
Lots of guns.
Lots of guns.
Oh, goodness. All right, folks. We'll see you all next time. Have a great Memorial Day weekend if you're in the United States, if you celebrate. Otherwise, just have a great weekend. We'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Squirtle, squirtle.
Bye-bye.